I opened the door to my husband's company party with a gift in hand, only to see him on one knee proposing to his new CEO, my best friend. "Will you leave my poor, frigid wife and marry me?" he asked. Everyone laughed. Then she said yes. So I walked away. Quietly cancelled every payment, party, and trip, and pulled out my 90% company share. Worth $357 million. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. You know that specific type of silence that happens right before a tornado touches down? It's heavy. It's static. It makes the fine hairs on your arms stand up. That is exactly what hit me the moment my heels clicked against the marble floor of the Grand Meridian Ballroom. I had checked the invitation 3 times before leaving the house. Nexus Innovations Annual Gala. 7 o'clock sharp. I was on time, dressed in a navy blue silk suit that cost more than my first car, yet I felt like an intruder at my own funeral. I stood in the entryway, clutching a small, velvet-wrapped gift box so hard my knuckles were turning white. Inside was a vintage 1958 Patek Philippe watch. It was a masterpiece of engineering, understated and timeless. It was exactly the kind of thing my husband, Russell, said he admired but would never buy for himself. I had spent months tracking it down through a private dealer in Switzerland. It was supposed to be a surprise, a celebration of our 15th anniversary, which coincidentally fell on the same night as the company's biggest night of the year. The ballroom was dripping in excess. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling, scattering light like frozen fireworks. The centerpieces were towering arrangements of white orchids and hydrangeas that I knew, for a fact, cost $600 per table because I was the one who approved the budget. The air smelled of expensive perfume, roasted prime rib, and that distinct, metallic scent of old money mixed with new ambition. I took a deep breath and stepped further into the room. I should have felt proud. This was my company. Well, on paper, to the world, it was Russell's company. He was the face, the charm, the CEO who gave the keynote speeches. But I was the foundation. I was the one who wrote the original code in a cramped apartment while Russell was out playing golf. I was the one who used my grandmother's inheritance to fund the startup when no bank would look at us. I was the invisible architect. But tonight, the architecture felt hostile. As I navigated through the crowd, I noticed the shift in energy. Conversations didn't just stop, they died unnatural deaths. People I had known for a decade, board members' wives I had hosted for brunch, investors I had sent Christmas cards to, would catch my eye and then immediately look at their shoes or suddenly find something fascinating on the ceiling. Meredith? I turned to see Sheila, the wife of our CFO. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Her hand went to her throat, clutching her pearl necklace. "Hello, Sheila," I said, forcing a smile that felt tight on my face. "Lovely dress. Is Russell around?" I wanted to give him this before his speech. Sheila's eyes darted to the stage at the far end of the room, then back to me. Her expression wasn't friendly. It was pity. Pure, unadulterated pity. It is a terrible thing to see on the face of a peer. It makes you feel small. It makes you feel naked. "Oh, honey," she whispered, taking a half step back. You didn't know? You shouldn't be here." My stomach dropped. "No, what?" "Just, maybe you should go back to the car," she stammered. "Really, Meredith? Don't go in there." I ignored her. A cold dread was spreading through my chest, a physical chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I pushed past her, moving deeper into the room. The crowd was denser here, a wall of tuxedos and evening gowns, all facing the stage. Then, the laughter started. It wasn't polite applause or the murmur of agreement. It was a roar. It was the kind of raucous, belly-shaking laughter that comes at someone else's expense. It was cruel. I elbowed my way through a group of junior developers who were holding their phones up, recording. I saw the screens before I saw the reality. On a dozen iPhone screens, I saw my husband. I broke through the final line of people and there he was. Russell. My husband of 15 years. The man I had built this entire life for. He was on the stage, under the spotlight, looking more handsome and vibrant than I had seen him in years. And he was down on one knee. My first thought, a desperate, nonsensical attempt by my brain to protect itself, was that he had dropped something. Maybe his cufflink. But he wasn't looking at the floor. He was looking up. He was holding a microphone in one hand and a ring box in the other. A ring box that was open, revealing a diamond that looked like a shard of ice, easily 5 carats. And he was looking at her. Vanessa. My best friend. The woman I had met in business ethics class 20 years ago. The woman I had hired as our director of operations when she was broke and desperate. The woman who had come over for wine and cheese every Friday night for the last decade, crying on my shoulder about her bad breakups while I comforted her. She stood there in a shimmering gold dress that hugged every curve, a dress I realized with a sick jolt was from the new designer collection I had mentioned liking just last week. She looked triumphant. She looked like a queen accepting tribute. Russell's voice boomed through the speakers, amplified and crystal clear. Vanessa, he said, and his voice cracked with an emotion I hadn't heard him direct at me since our wedding day. You are the vision behind this company. You are the fire in my life. I stood frozen. The gift box in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I am done living a half-life, Russell continued, playing to the crowd. He turned his head slightly, and for a split second, his eyes scanned the room. He didn't see me in the shadows, but he performed for the audience. I am ready to stop pretending. He took a breath, and then he delivered the line that would end my life as I knew it. Will you leave my poor, frigid wife and marry me? The room exploded. Before I continue telling you what I did next, and believe me, you are going to want to hear this because I didn't scream, and I didn't faint, I want to take a second to welcome you here. If you are listening to my story, please let me know in the comments which city or state you are tuning in from. It helps me feel a little less alone in all this. Go ahead, type it in. I'll wait. Okay, are you ready? Because what happened next was the beginning of the end for them. Will you leave my poor, frigid wife and marry me? The words hung in the air, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Frigid. Poor. The laughter that followed was a physical blow. It was a tidal wave of humiliation. It washed over me, drowning out the rational part of my brain. I looked around. People I employed, people whose mortgages were paid by the salary checks I authorized, were laughing. They were clapping. It was like witnessing a public execution where the crowd cheers for the axe. I looked at Vanessa. In that moment, I expected, perhaps foolishly, to see hesitation. I expected my best friend of 20 years to look shocked, to slap him, to say, "Russell, are you crazy? Meredith is my friend." But she didn't. Vanessa threw her head back and laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound that the microphone picked up perfectly. Then she looked down at him, her eyes gleaming with tears that looked suspiciously well-rehearsed. She placed a hand on her chest, feigning surprise, even though she was wearing a dress that perfectly matched the ring setting. "Yes," she screamed into the microphone he held up for her. "Yes, Russell. Finally!" The crowd went wild. Someone popped a champagne cork. The band struck up a celebratory tune, something upbeat and romantic. Russell stood up, swept her into his arms, and kissed her. It wasn't a quick peck. It was a deep, passionate, theatrical kiss. The kind of kiss you see in the finale of a romantic comedy. He dipped her low, and the crowd cheered louder. I stood there, a ghost in the back of the room. My heart was hammering so hard against my ribs I thought it might crack them. My vision blurred at the edges. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to react. The primal part of my brain wanted to run up those stairs. I wanted to claw that smirk off Vanessa's face. I wanted to take the heavy Patek Philippe watch box and smash it over Russell's perfectly coiffed head. I wanted to grab the microphone and scream until my throat bled, telling everyone that the poor wife was the one who owned 90% of the shares they were standing on. I took a step forward. My hand trembled. But then, I stopped. I remembered something my father used to tell me when he taught me how to play chess. Meredith, he would say, when your opponent makes a mistake, don't interrupt them. And when they expose their neck, don't scratch it. Wait until you can cut it off. Russell had just exposed more than his neck. He had exposed his entire flank. He was drunk on ego. He was high on the adrenaline of public adoration. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I was the poor, frigid wife sitting at home, knitting or waiting by the phone. He had absolutely no idea I was in the room. And Vanessa? She was basking in the glow. She had won. In her mind, she had finally taken the one thing I had that she couldn't replicate: my husband, my status, my life. If I made a scene now, I would just be the crazy ex-wife. I would be the frigid woman having a meltdown. I would be the entertainment. They would record me screaming, and that video would live on the internet forever. I would give them exactly what they wanted: a reaction. No. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The air tasted like betrayal and expensive champagne. I looked at the happy couple one last time. I memorized the way Russell's hand rested on the small of her back, a gesture he used to do to me. I memorized the way Vanessa looked at the crowd, hungry for their validation. I tightened my grip on the gift box until the sharp corners dug into my palm, grounding me. I turned around. Meredith? It was Sheila again, the CFO's wife. She was still standing near the entrance, looking at me with wide, terrified eyes. She must have thought I was going to pull a gun or faint. Are you okay? I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman had eaten at my table. She knew. They all knew. For how long? Months? Years? While I was working late approving budgets, were they all laughing at me? I'm fine, Sheila, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow, metallic, but steady. Enjoy the party. I hear the cake is expensive. I didn't wait for her response. I pivoted on my heel, my back straight, my chin up. I walked out of the ballroom with the same quiet dignity I had walked in with. I walked past the security guards who nodded at me, oblivious to the fact that my life had just incinerated. I walked past the coat check. I pushed through the heavy revolving doors and stepped out into the cool, damp night air of the city. The noise of the party faded instantly, replaced by the honking of taxis and the distant siren of an ambulance. My hands were shaking now. Uncontrollable tremors that started in my fingers and worked their way up to my shoulders. I leaned against a concrete pillar, gasping for air. The tears I had held back threatened to spill over, hot and stinging. No, I whispered to myself. Not yet. You don't get to cry yet. I pulled out my phone. My screensaver was a picture of Russell and me from a trip to Napa 3 years ago. We looked happy. I looked at his smiling face, and I felt a wave of nausea so strong I almost threw up on the sidewalk. I swiped the screen. I opened the Uber app. My fingers flew across the glass. Destination, home. But it wasn't home anymore. It was just a crime scene where I kept my clothes. The Uber arrived in 3 minutes. It was a black sedan, sleek and anonymous. I slid into the back seat, the leather cool against the back of my legs. The interior smelled of vanilla air freshener and stale coffee, a mundane, comforting smell compared to the cloying scent of lilies and deceit I had just left behind. Rough night? The driver caught my eyes in the rearview mirror. He was an older man, maybe 60, with kind eyes and gray hair tucked under a flat cap. His name on the app was Thomas. I looked out the window at the glittering facade of the Grand Meridian. Inside, they were probably cutting the cake now. Russell was probably making a toast, raising a glass of vintage Dom Perignon, paid for by my dividends, to his future with Vanessa. "You have no idea, Thomas," I said softly. "Well, you're safe now," he said simply. "We'll get you home." Safe. The word felt foreign. Was I safe? I had spent 20 years building a fortress of financial security, a marriage based on trust, a friendship based on shared history. And in the span of 5 minutes, I realized the fortress was made of paper and I was holding a match. I looked down at the velvet box still clutched in my hand. The Patek Philippe. It was a beautiful object. It represented hours of craftsmanship. It represented the time I had spent thinking about Russell, loving him, wanting to give him something that signified forever. Now, it just looked like a bribe. A pathetic attempt to buy the affection of a man who was already sleeping with my best friend. "Thomas," I asked, "do you like watches?" He chuckled, keeping his eyes on the road. "I use my phone, ma'am. Time is time. Doesn't matter if it's on a Rolex or a screen." Smart man. I rolled down the window. The wind whipped into the car, messing up the hair I had spent an hour styling. We were crossing the bridge now, the dark water of the river churning below us. I held the box out the window. "Ma'am?" Thomas asked, his voice alarmed. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think about the $50,000. I didn't think about the rarity of the item. I just opened my fingers. The box tumbled into the darkness. It was gone in an instant, swallowed by the night and the river below. I pulled my hand back in and rolled up the window. A strange sensation washed over me. I expected regret. I expected panic. Instead, I felt lighter. $50,000 lighter. It was the first piece of ballast thrown overboard. The ship was still sinking, but at least I was lightening the load. "Did you just?" Thomas trailed off. "It was garbage," I said. "Just expensive garbage." The rest of the ride was silent. I rested my head against the cool glass and watched the city blur by. I thought about the divorce laws in our state. I thought about the corporate bylaws of Nexus Innovations. I thought about the biometric safe in my home office. When we pulled up to the curb of my building, the penthouse Russell insisted we buy because it had a status address, I sat there for a moment. "We're here, ma'am," Thomas said gently. I looked at the building. It loomed above me, a tower of glass and steel. It looked cold. It looked empty. "Thank you, Thomas," I said. I tipped him $100 on the app. It was the only kindness I had received all night, and I wanted to reward it. I walked into the lobby. The night doorman, Patrick, smiled at me. "Good evening, Mrs. Monroe." "Early night?" "Mr. Monroe isn't with you?" "Mr. Monroe is detained," I said, my voice flat. "He's having a very big night." "Oh, that's good. He works hard." "Yes," I said, stepping into the elevator. "He certainly has been working on something." The elevator ride to the 45th floor took 20 seconds. 20 seconds of watching the numbers climb. 20 seconds to compose myself. When the doors opened directly into our foyer, the silence of the penthouse hit me. It was usually a peaceful silence. Tonight, it felt like the silence of a tomb. I kicked off my heels, leaving them right there in the middle of the hallway. I walked into the kitchen, the marble floors cold against my stockinged feet. I didn't turn on the lights. The glow from the city skyline outside the floor-to-ceiling windows provided enough illumination. I went straight to the bar cart. I bypassed the wine. I reached for the bottle of whiskey, a single malt scotch that Russell saved for special occasions. I poured myself a glass, neat. I took a sip, letting the burn ground me. Then, I walked into my office. Not the shared study where Russell played video games and pretended to work. My office. The small, soundproof room at the back of the penthouse where the real work happened. I sat down in my ergonomic chair. I looked at the dual monitors that were currently dark. I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried up in the Uber. Now, there was only clarity. Cold, hard, binary clarity. I had built this company. I had built this life. I had built Russell. And now, I was going to dismantle them all. Brick by brick. Dollar by dollar. But first, I had to understand how I had been so blind. I had to look at the data. I had to re-examine the source code of my life to find the bugs. And the biggest bug of all had a name, Vanessa. It's easy to see the red flags when you're looking in the rearview mirror. But when you're driving 90 miles an hour down the highway of life, they just look like decorations. I met Vanessa in our sophomore year of college. I was the quiet girl in the front row of the lecture hall, taking meticulous notes with color-coded pens. Vanessa was the girl who burst in 10 minutes late, holding a Starbucks cup, looking effortlessly chaotic and beautiful. She had a laugh that made you want to be in on the joke, and a way of looking at you that made you feel chosen. She chose me. Or rather, she targeted me. Hey, she had whispered during a midterm exam, leaning over so far her hair brushed my arm. What's the answer to number 4? I should have covered my paper. I should have ignored her. Instead, I slid my arm slightly to the left. That was the dynamic for the next 20 years. Vanessa needed, and I provided. She called it friendship. I see now it was parasitism. I remember our senior year. We were roommates in a drafty off-campus apartment. I was working 2 part-time jobs, one at the library and one tutoring, to pay my share of the rent. Vanessa didn't work. She said she was focusing on her art, which mostly involved sleeping until noon and dating guys with motorcycles. One night, I came home exhausted, carrying a bag of groceries I had budget shopped for. Vanessa was sitting on our thrift store couch, crying. What's wrong? I asked, dropping the bags. It's my tuition, she sobbed. My dad, he didn't send the check. They're going to kick me out, Meredith. I won't be able to graduate with you. My heart broke for her. The thought of graduating without my best friend seemed impossible. We were a team. Meredith and Vanessa. The brains and the beauty. How much is it? I asked. 2,000, she whispered. That was my entire savings. It was the money I had scraped together for a down payment on a car so I wouldn't have to take the bus to my internship. I'll lend it to you, I said. She stopped crying instantly. You would? Oh my God, Mare. You're my savior. I swear, I'll pay you back as soon as I sell my painting. She never sold the painting. She never paid me back. And when I bought a rusty Honda Civic 3 months later because that was all I could afford, she made fun of it. Oh honey, she laughed, sitting in the passenger seat with her muddy boots on the dashboard. This car smells like old soup. But it suits you. You're so practical. Practical. That was her favorite word for me. It was a backhanded compliment. It meant boring. It meant safe. It meant I was the soil, and she was the flower. Fast forward 10 years. I was building Nexus. I was lonely. I was working 18-hour days. Vanessa had bounced from job to job, marketing assistant, event planner, yoga instructor. She showed up at my office one day, looking desperate. I need a job, Mare, she said. Just something to get me back on my feet. I'm drowning. I hired her. I created a position for her, Director of Culture. It was a fluff title with a serious salary. I started her at $80,000 a year. You're the best, she squealed, hugging me. We're going to rule the world together. But she didn't work. She gossiped. She planned happy hours. She flirted with the interns. And she constantly undermined me. I remember a meeting about 3 years ago. I had just presented a new strategic direction for our software. I was proud of it. It was complex, innovative. Vanessa raised her hand. Meredith, honey, that's all great, she said in front of the entire executive team. But it's so dry. No one buys algorithms. They buy feelings. Maybe you should let Russell handle the vision. You just do the typing. The room laughed. Russell laughed. She's right, babe, Russell had said, patting my hand. You're the engine. Let us be the paint job. I felt humiliated. I felt small. But I swallowed it. Why? Because I thought they loved me. I thought they were protecting me from my own social awkwardness. I was the ugly duckling who paid for the pond so the swans could swim. I looked back at the memory of Vanessa at the party tonight. The way she looked at Russell. It wasn't new. I realized with a jolt that I had seen that look before. Last Christmas. We were at my house. Vanessa was wearing a red dress that was a little too short. She and Russell were in the kitchen, making cocktails. I was in the living room setting up the tree. I heard them laughing. A low, intimate laugh. I had walked in, and they jumped apart. Just spilled some vermouth. Vanessa had chirped, her face flushed. I believed her. God, I was stupid. I believed her because the alternative was unthinkable. Who betrays the person who paid their rent? Who steals the husband of the woman who signed their paychecks for a decade? A snake. That's who. But here is the thing about snakes. They are cold-blooded. They only move when they are warm. And I had been keeping Vanessa warm for 20 years. I had provided the heat, the shelter, the food. Tonight, I had finally stopped being the heat lamp. I sat in my dark office, the whiskey burning in my stomach. I thought about the corporate credit card Vanessa carried. The business trips she went on. The consulting fees I had approved for her department. I pulled a notepad toward me. I wrote down a name, Vanessa. And next to it, I wrote a single word, evict. Not just from her apartment, which I knew for a fact she paid for with her salary from my company. But from my life. From my history. But Vanessa was just the parasite. The host was the problem. The host was Russell. And his betrayal cut deeper because he wasn't just my friend. He was my other half. Or so I thought. If Vanessa was the parasite, Russell was the project. I met Russell a year after college. I was working as a junior back-end developer for a logistics firm, hiding in a cubicle, wearing oversized sweaters and listening to audiobooks while I coded. Russell was in sales. He was everything I wasn't. Loud, charismatic, tall, with a smile that could sell ice to a polar bear. He walked into the break room one day while I was making tea. "You're Meredith, right?" he asked, leaning against the vending machine. "The genius who fixed the server crash last week?" I blushed. No one ever called me a genius. They called me tech support or hey you. I just did my job, I mumbled. "Well, you saved my commission check," he said, flashing that dazzling smile. "Let me buy you dinner." Real dinner, not vending machine crackers. I fell in love with him over appetizers. I fell in love with the way he listened to me talk about data structures without yawning. I fell in love with the way he made me feel visible. But looking back, I wonder, did he see me? Or did he see the inheritance? My grandmother had passed away 6 months before I met Russell. She was a frugal, stern woman who had invested wisely in the stock market since the 1950s. When she died, she left me everything. $2 million. It was a secret. I didn't tell people at work. I drove my rusty Honda. I lived in my cheap apartment. I was terrified that if people knew, they would treat me differently. But I told Russell. We were 6 months into dating. We were lying in bed on a Sunday morning. I have an idea for a company, I whispered. A new way to integrate cloud storage with AI sorting. But I need capital. Capital is hard to find, Russell sighed. Banks hate risk. I have the money, I said. I told him about the inheritance. I watched his eyes widen. I watched the wheels turn. Meredith, he said, grabbing my hands. This is it. This is our destiny. You have the brain, you have the money. I have the sales skills. We can build an empire. And we did. Or rather, I funded it, and he named it Nexus Innovations, he declared. It sounds powerful. When it came time to incorporate, I made the decision that would define the next 15 years of my life. I was terrified of public speaking. I hated confrontation. The idea of pitching to investors made me hyperventilate. You be the CEO, I told Russell. You be the face. I'll take the title of Chief Technical Officer. I'll stay in the back and make it work. You go out there and sell it. Are you sure? He asked. But he didn't ask twice. He looked at the CEO placard on the desk and puffed out his chest. We went to a lawyer to draw up the papers. Mr. Henderson. He was an old friend of my grandmother's. He looked at Russell with suspicion from day one. Meredith, Mr. Henderson had said, looking over his glasses. If you are putting up 100% of the capital and doing 100% of the product development, you should retain controlling interest. Of course, I said. I'll keep 90% of the shares. Russell can have 10% as a founding partner. But I want him to have voting rights on daily operations. I don't want to be bothered with the administrative stuff. Mr. Henderson frowned but drafted the papers. However, he added a clause. A clause I had almost forgotten about until tonight. The kill switch, Mr. Henderson had called it. What's this? Russell had asked, flipping through the 50-page document, clearly bored by the legalese. Standard boilerplate, I had lied, covering for Mr. Henderson. Just protecting the assets in case of hostile takeovers. Right, Russell said, signing his name with a flourish. He didn't read it. He never read anything longer than a tweet. That clause stated that while the CEO had operational control, the majority shareholder, me, retained super-administrative access to all financial and operational decisions. It also stated that any breach of fiduciary duty, including using corporate funds for personal affairs, constituted an immediate breach of contract, triggering a clause that allowed the majority shareholder to freeze all assets and terminate the CEO without board approval. For 15 years, Russell played king. He hired the staff. He gave the interviews to Forbes. He took the credit. I built this company from a garage, he would brag at parties. I stood next to him, smiling, holding his drink. He worked so hard, I would agree. I let him have the glory because I thought we were partners. I thought his win was my win. I thought we were building a legacy for our future children he always said we were too busy to have yet. Next year, babe, he'd say. Once the IPO happens. Once the merger settles. There were never going to be children. I realized that now. He didn't want a family with me. He wanted a bank account that cooked dinner. He became addicted to the lifestyle my code provided. The tailored suits. The first-class flights. The country club memberships. And slowly, his respect for me eroded. "Meredith, don't bore the guests with tech talk," he'd whisper at dinners. "Meredith, buy a new dress, you look like a librarian. Meredith, you're so frigid. Loosen up." Frigid. That word again. I wasn't frigid. I was exhausted. I was carrying the weight of a multi-million-dollar corporation on my back while he played celebrity. I looked at the wedding photo on my desk. Russell looked triumphant. I looked adoring. I picked up the frame. I looked at his smile. The smile of a man who thought he had fooled the world. "You didn't build this, Russell," I whispered to the empty room. "You didn't write a single line of code. You didn't stay up until 4 a.m. debugging the kernel. You were just the mascot. And what do you do with a mascot when they start tackling their own team? You fire them." I set the frame down, face down. I turned to my computer. I wiggled the mouse. The screens hummed to life, glowing with the blue light of the Nexus operating system. My system. It was time to go to work. I poured myself another finger of whiskey. My hands were steady now. The trembling had been replaced by a cold, rhythmic drumming of my fingers against the mahogany desk. I logged into the Nexus mainframe. Usually, I logged in as CTO_Evans. It gave me access to the code, the product roadmaps, the server status. Tonight, I didn't use that login. I typed in a username that hadn't been used in 5 years. Admin_prime. Password. I typed it in. It was a string of 30 characters, a combination of my grandmother's birthday, the chemical formula for caffeine, and the coordinates of the first apartment where I wrote the Nexus source code. Access granted. The screen shifted. The interface changed from the friendly blue of the employee portal to a stark, red and black command center. This was the backend. The God mode. I navigated to the financial oversight module. First, I wanted to see the damage. I pulled up the corporate credit card statements for Russell Monroe, CEO, and Vanessa Thorne, COO. I scrolled. And as I scrolled, my jaw tightened. It wasn't just a few dinners. Ritz-Carlton, Maui, $12,000. Dates coincided with his tech conference in Seattle. Tiffany & Co. $45,000. The receipt for the ring. He bought her engagement ring on the company card. The audacity was breathtaking. Porsche lease payments, $2,500 per month. Vanessa's car. Fertility clinic, Upper East Side, $15,000. I stopped. I stared at that last line item. Fertility clinic. I couldn't breathe. For 5 years, Russell had told me he wasn't ready for kids. "The company is our baby," he'd say. He wasn't ready for kids with me. A primal roar built up in my throat, but I swallowed it down. Rage is a fire. If you let it out, it burns you. If you keep it in, it becomes an engine. "Okay," I whispered. "You want to play with the company money? Let's see how you like it when the ATM eats your card." I opened the emergency protocols folder. There it was. A file named protocol_ice_age. I had written this script 10 years ago, late at night, after a fight where Russell had threatened to leave me if I didn't stop nagging him about expenses. I had written it as a failsafe. I never thought I'd use it. I double-clicked. A dialog box popped up. Warning, this action will freeze all assets associated with Nexus Innovations' primary operating accounts. All outgoing transfers will be halted. All corporate credit lines will be suspended. Executive override required to reverse. Do you wish to proceed? Asterisk. I moved the mouse over the yes button. I thought about the poor, frigid wife comment. I thought about the laughter. I thought about the fertility clinic bill. I clicked. Processing. Asterisk protocol active. Assets frozen. Asterisk. I wasn't done. I navigated to the travel management system. I saw an upcoming itinerary. Asterisk flight, New York to St. Bart's. First class. 2 passengers, Russell Monroe, Vanessa Thorne. Departure, tomorrow, 10:00 a.m. Asterisk. They were going on their engagement moon tomorrow. I clicked cancel reservation. Reason for cancellation? I typed, fraudulent activity. Refund process to, corporate account, frozen. They wouldn't just be grounded. They would be stranded. Next, I went to the HR portal. I pulled up Vanessa's employee file. Status, active. Salary, $250,000 plus bonuses. I clicked edit. Status, suspended pending investigation. Access to building, revoked. Company email, disabled. I did the same for Russell. But for him, I added a flag. Breach of fiduciary duty. This would automatically alert the board of directors that a formal internal audit had been triggered. Finally, I sent a command to the building security system of our headquarters. Invalidate credentials, R. Monroe, V. Thorne. Tomorrow morning, when they tried to swipe their badges to get into the office to brag about their engagement, the light wouldn't turn green. It would turn red. I sat back. It had taken me 12 minutes. In 12 minutes, I had cut off their money, their travel, their jobs, and their access. I looked at the clock. 1 a.m. The party was probably winding down. They were probably heading to a hotel suite, also paid for by the company, to celebrate. They would try to order room service. Or pop another bottle of champagne. And the card would decline. I imagined that moment. The confusion. The try it again to the waiter. The embarrassment. Enjoy your night, Russell, I whispered. It's the last one you'll ever enjoy on my dime. I closed the laptop. I didn't shut it down. I left it glowing in the dark, a digital eye watching over the destruction I had just unleashed. I stood up. I felt exhausted, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel heavy. I walked to the bedroom. I took off the navy blue suit. I took off the diamond earrings Russell had given me 5 years ago, probably bought with company money too. I dropped them in the trash can in the bathroom. I washed my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't see a poor, frigid wife. I saw a woman who had just woken up from a 20-year coma. I went to bed. And for the first time in a decade, I slept like a baby. I woke up at 7 a.m. naturally. No alarm. Just the sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. For a split second, I forgot. I reached out across the bed, expecting to feel Russell's warmth. My hand hit cool, empty sheets. Then, the memory of the ballroom crashed down on me. The laughter. The ring. The frigid wife. But instead of pain, I felt a surge of adrenaline. It was game day. I got up and went to the kitchen. I made coffee. Not the fancy espresso Russell insisted on, but cheap, dark roast drip coffee that I loved and he hated. The smell filled the kitchen, rich and bitter. I walked over to the kitchen island where I had left my phone charging. I hadn't looked at it since the Uber ride. I tapped the screen. It lit up like a Christmas tree in hell. 157 missed calls. 84 text messages. 22 voicemails. I scrolled through the list. Russell, 42 calls. Russell, 28 calls. Vanessa, 15 calls. Amex fraud alert, text. Chase Bank fraud alert, text. Mother, Evelyn Monroe, 12 calls. Ah, Evelyn. Russell's mother. The woman who had criticized my wedding dress, my cooking, and my inability to give her a grandson. Of course, she called. I picked up the phone and sat on a bar stool, sipping my coffee. I decided to listen to one voicemail. Just to test the temperature of the water. I clicked on the most recent one from Russell, timestamped 6:45 a.m. Asterisk Meredith. Pick up the goddamn phone. What is going on? We're at the hotel and the card was declined. They wouldn't let us check out. I had to call my dad to wire money to the front desk. It was humiliating. And now I can't log into my email? Did you do something? If this is about last night, you are overreacting. It was a joke, Meredith. A performance. Call me back right now or I swear to God, asterisk. Click. A joke, I said to the empty room. He was going to try to spin a public proposal to his mistress as a joke. The delusion was almost impressive. I checked Vanessa's texts. Asterisk Vanessa, 2 a.m. Mayor, please pick up. There's a misunderstanding, asterisk. Asterisk Vanessa, 2:15 a.m. My Uber app isn't working. It says payment method invalid. Did you cancel the corporate card? That's illegal, Meredith. That's my compensation, asterisk. Asterisk Vanessa, 3 a.m. You're being a bitch. We need to talk. Now, asterisk. I smiled. A genuine, sharp smile. Then, the phone rang again in my hand. The caller ID flashed, Evelyn Monroe. I hesitated. Then, I swiped accept. Hello, Evelyn. Meredith. Her voice was a screech. What have you done? Russell just called me from the airport. He says they can't print their tickets. He says you cut off his money. I didn't cut off his money, Evelyn, I said calmly, taking a sip of coffee. I froze the company's assets. There's a difference. If Russell has his own money, he's welcome to use it. His own money? Everything is his money. He is the CEO. He was the CEO, I corrected. As of 1 a.m. last night, he is under investigation for embezzlement. Embezzlement? She gasped. How dare you? After everything he's done for you? You ungrateful little. He made you. He gave you a life. And because you're jealous of a little friendship with Vanessa. He proposed to her, Evelyn. On stage. While calling me ugly and frigid. Oh, stop being so dramatic, Evelyn scoffed. Men have needs. If you were a better wife, he wouldn't look elsewhere. You should be apologizing to him. You should be begging him to come back. Instead, you strand him at the airport like a vindictive child. Are you done? I asked. No, I am not done. Fix this, Meredith. Fix it right now or I will come over there and... Evelyn, I interrupted, my voice dropping an octave. The credit card you use for your weekly bridge club lunches? The one Russell gave you? Silence. That's a company card, Evelyn. It's in the audit file. Every Cobb salad. Every glass of Chardonnay. It's all marked as fraud. You might want to bring cash to your game next week. I hung up. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Russell. Then I blocked Vanessa. The silence that followed was exquisite. I wasn't hiding from them. I was preparing. I knew they would come to me. They had to. I held the keys to the kingdom. The intercom buzzed. I looked at the monitor. It was the doorman. Mrs. Monroe? There's a Mr. Jared Stevens here to see you. He says he works for Russell? He looks like he's about to pass out. Jared. Russell's executive assistant. A sweet kid, fresh out of business school, drowning in student loans. He did all of Russell's actual work while Russell played golf. Send him up, Patrick, I said. I tightened the belt of my silk robe. The first wave of the tsunami was about to hit the shore. Jared looked like he had run all the way from the office. His tie was askew, his hair was a mess, and he was clutching a leather satchel like a shield. He was sweating, even though it was a cool morning. I opened the door. Mrs. Monroe! Oh, thank God, he gasped, practically falling into the foyer. I didn't know where else to go. Russell isn't answering, Vanessa isn't answering, and the office is on fire. Metaphorically. Maybe literally soon. Breathe, Jared, I said, gesturing to the living room. Come in. Do you want coffee? He looked at me like I had just offered him a hand grenade. Coffee? Mrs. Monroe, the system is down. Everything. Payroll was supposed to run at 9 a.m. It failed. The London team can't log in. The server room is locked down, physically locked, the keycards don't work. And. He swallowed hard. And there's a message on the main dashboard. It just says audit in progress. Everyone is freaking out. Is the company going under? Did the feds raid us? I walked over to the coffee pot and poured him a mug. I handed it to him. His hands shook so much the liquid sloshed over the side. The company isn't going under, Jared, I said calmly. It's being restructured. Restructured? By who? Russell is stuck at JFK. He sent me a text screaming about glitches and told me to come find you because you broke the internet. I didn't break it, I said, sitting down opposite him. I fixed it. Jared blinked. He was a smart kid, but he had spent 2 years believing the myth of Russell Monroe. He thought Russell was the genius and I was just the wife who showed up at holiday parties. I don't understand, he whispered. Jared, I said. Who signs your checks? Nexus Innovations. And who owns Nexus Innovations? Well, Russell. Mr. Monroe. He founded it. No, I said softly. He didn't. I did. I saw the confusion on his face. I wrote the code, Jared. I own 90% of the shares. Russell owns 10%. And last night, Russell violated his contract by trying to use company funds to fly his mistress, your boss, Vanessa, to St. Bart's. Jared's mouth fell open. Mistress? Vanessa? You didn't know? I mean, they spent a lot of time together, but... He trailed off, his face flushing red. He knew. Of course he knew. He probably booked the hotel rooms. It's okay, Jared. You were just doing your job. But now, your job is changing. I stood up and walked to the desk in the corner. I picked up a thick manila envelope I had prepared before he arrived. This isn't a technical glitch, I said, handing him the envelope. This is a hostile takeover. By the owner. Jared took the envelope. It was heavy. What is this? This is for Russell. Since he is stuck at the airport, I assume he will be coming back here, or to Vanessa's apartment, very soon. I need you to give this to him. What do I tell him? Tell him there are no bugs in the system. Tell him the system is working perfectly, exactly as designed. Tell him that sometimes when you burn a bridge, you realize too late that you were standing on the wrong side of the river. Jared stared at me. He looked terrified, but also impressed. Mrs. Monroe, he said tentatively. What about payroll? The developers? They have rent to pay. I know, I said. I've already set up a manual override for the general staff payroll. It will process by noon. But executive payroll? That's frozen. Russell and Vanessa aren't getting paid today. Or ever again. Jared nodded slowly. He stood up, clutching the envelope. I should go find him. You should. And Jared? Yes, ma'am? Update your resume. I'm going to need a new director of operations to replace Vanessa. If you deliver this message clearly, you might be in the running. His eyes widened. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. He turned and walked out the door. He walked a little taller than when he came in. I watched him go. The pawn had been sent. The king was about to receive his checkmate notice. I sat back down. Now, I just had to wait for the explosion. It wouldn't take long. A narcissist denied his supply is a dangerous thing, and Russell was about to realize he was starving. I picked up my book. I had a few hours before the real confrontation began. I intended to enjoy them. The envelope Jared had carried out of my apartment felt like a bomb I had just armed. But while the fuse was burning on that explosive, I had to prepare the fallout shelter. I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the silence that used to make me feel lonely but now felt like armor. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years, but knew by heart. Henderson Law, a gruff voice answered on the second ring. Hello, Arthur, I said. It's Meredith Evans. Not Monroe. Evans. Arthur Henderson had been my grandmother's lawyer. He was 80 years old, sharp as a razor, and the only person besides me who knew the true structure of Nexus Innovations. He hated Russell. He had refused to come to our wedding, sending a card that simply said, "Make sure you keep the prenup in a fireproof safe." Meredith, he said, his tone shifting from professional to alert. I've been waiting for this call for 15 years. Is it time? It's time, I said. He crossed the line, Arthur. Corporate funds for personal travel. Embezzlement. And public humiliation. I saw the video, Arthur grunted. It's trending on Twitter. CEO proposes to COO while wife watches. You're the wife in the title, I assume? I am. Good. That video is worth more than gold in a courtroom. It proves intent to humiliate, alienation of affection, and it publicly documents their relationship while still married to you. It destroys any "we were just friends" defense. What do you want to do? I want the scorched earth protocol, I said. Arthur let out a low whistle. You sure? That leaves nothing standing. I'm sure. I'm sending you the draft of the terms. I need you to make them legally bulletproof by noon. I spent the next 2 hours drafting the document that was currently sitting in the envelope Jared was delivering, but also expanding on it for the formal legal filing. I didn't just want Russell out. I wanted him erased. The terms were brutal. They were designed to be. Clause 1, immediate resignation. Russell Monroe would resign as CEO, effective immediately. No golden parachute. No severance package. No advisory role. He would walk out with the clothes on his back. Clause 2, termination of Vanessa Thorne, immediate termination for cause, gross misconduct, embezzlement, hostile work environment. She would be barred from the premises and legally enjoined from contacting any Nexus employee or client. Clause 3, restitution. This was the heavy hitter. I calculated the unauthorized spending over the last 5 years. The dinners, the trips, the gifts, the lease on Vanessa's Porsche, the apartment she lived in, which was technically a corporate satellite office. It totaled $3.8 million. Russell would agree to repay this sum personally or face criminal charges for corporate theft. Since I knew he didn't have $3.8 million, this effectively meant I would seize his personal assets, his car, his watch collection, and his half of our vacation home. Clause 4, the NDA and non-compete, they would be banned from working in the tech sector for 5 years. They would be banned from speaking about Nexus, me, or their time at the company. No tell-all books. No interviews. Silence. Clause 5, public admission. Russell would sign a statement acknowledging that Meredith Evans was the sole founder and creator of the Nexus algorithm. He would admit his role was purely promotional. I stared at the document on my screen. It looked like a weapon. My phone buzzed. A text from Jared. Asterisk delivered. He's at Vanessa's apartment. He's reading it now, asterisk. I closed my eyes and visualized the scene. Russell, sweaty and panicked, sitting on Vanessa's beige suede sofa, bought with my money, reading the words that ended his life as a fake king. I waited. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It wasn't Russell. It was a number I didn't recognize. This is Meredith. Meredith, it's George. From the board. George Abernathy. The chairman of the board. A man who had always patted me on the head and called me Russell's better half while ignoring my input in meetings. Hello, George. Meredith, we have a situation. George sounded out of breath. We've received a notification from the bank. And an alert from the SEC? Something about an internal audit? And Russell isn't answering his phone. We're hearing rumors about an affair? It's not a rumor, George, I said, my voice cool. It was a live broadcast last night. Didn't you see the proposal? I thought that was a skit. For the gala. It wasn't a skit. Russell is attempting to use company funds to finance his new life with Vanessa. I have frozen the accounts to protect the shareholders. You're welcome. You froze the accounts? Meredith, you can't do that. You're just you're a shareholder, but you're not the executive. Actually, George, if you check the incorporation bylaws, specifically Article 9, Section C, you'll see that as the majority stakeholder with 90% equity, I have emergency powers in the event of executive malfeasance. I am exercising those powers. Silence on the other end. I could hear him shuffling papers. 90%, he whispered. I thought. Russell always said it was 50-50. Russell lied, I said. About a lot of things. I suggest you call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I will be there to accept Russell's resignation and present the forensic accounting of his theft. If the board supports him, I will be forced to sue each of you for negligence in your fiduciary duties. Do I make myself clear? George sputtered. Yes. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. I hung up. I walked to the window. The city looked different today. Sharper. The fog had lifted. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for my name. For 15 years, I had been a ghost in my own machine. Tomorrow, I was going to manifest. But before tomorrow, I had to get through tonight. And I knew, with a sickening certainty, that the snake wasn't going to go down without trying to bite one last time. The intercom buzzed again. Mrs. Monroe, Patrick the doorman sounded nervous. Miss Thorne is here. She's demanding to come up. She says she lives there? She does not live here, Patrick, I said. But let her up. It's time I took out the trash. I left the door unlocked. I wanted her to walk in. I wanted her to feel like she still had power, right up until the moment I took it away. The door flew open. Vanessa didn't walk in, she stormed in. She looked like a wreck, but a glamorous one. Her designer jeans were tight, her hair was in a messy bun that probably took an hour to perfect, and she was wearing sunglasses inside. She ripped them off as she entered the living room, her eyes blazing with entitlement. "You crazy bitch," she screamed, throwing her Louis Vuitton bag onto my sofa. "What is wrong with you? You cut off my card? You locked me out of the system? Do you have any idea who I am?" I was sitting in the armchair, sipping tea. I didn't stand up. I didn't flinch. "Hello, Vanessa," I said. "I see you didn't make it to St. Bart's. Don't play cute with me, Meredith." She marched over, pointing a manicured finger in my face. "You are ruining everything. Russell is a mess because of you. He's having a panic attack in my living room. We were supposed to be celebrating." "Celebrating what?" I asked calmly. "Sleeping with my husband? Or stealing my money?" "I didn't steal anything. I earned that money. I am the COO of this company. I built the brand." "You planned parties, Vanessa," I said. "And you slept with the CEO. That's not a C-suite skill set. That's the oldest profession in the world." Her face turned a blotchy red. "How dare you? You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of me. Ever since college. I was the one people wanted. I was the one with the spark. You were just the wallet. The boring, plain wallet." There it was. The truth she had been hiding for 20 years. "Is that what you think?" I asked. "That I was just a wallet?" "Yes," she laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Why else would Russell be with you? Look at you, Meredith. You wear oversized sweaters. You read books on coding for fun. You have zero sex appeal. Russell needed a wife to look respectable while he built the empire. Now that he's made it, he doesn't need the prop anymore. He needs a partner. Someone who matches his shine. Me." I stood up then. Slowly. "He didn't build the empire, Vanessa," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And neither did you." I walked over to the coffee table and picked up a folder. I tossed it toward her. It slid across the polished wood and stopped at her feet. "What is this?" she sneered. "Open it." She hesitated, then bent down and flipped it open. "This is a forensic audit of your spending," I said. "Page 1, the Porsche lease. Page 2, the rent on your apartment, listed as satellite office A. Page 3, the tuition for your niece's private school, listed as consulting fees. Page 4, the $50,000 you transferred to your mother, listed as charitable donation." Her hands started to shake. "Russell approved all of this," she stammered. "Russell doesn't have the authority to approve theft," I said. "And since I never signed off on these expenses as the majority shareholder, this is embezzlement. Felony embezzlement, Vanessa. In the state of New York, given the amount is over $1 million, you are looking at up to 25 years in prison." She dropped the folder. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a corpse. "Prison?" she whispered. "I've already sent a copy to the district attorney," I lied. I hadn't sent it yet, but she didn't know that. "And another copy to the IRS. You see, you didn't pay taxes on any of this income. That's tax evasion." "Meredith, wait," she said, her voice changing instantly. The aggression vanished, replaced by the wheedling, pathetic tone I remembered from college. "Mare, please. We're friends. Best friends. You can't send me to jail." I didn't know." Russell told me it was okay. He manipulated me. I'm a victim too. It was sickening. 5 minutes ago, she was the queen who deserved the crown. Now, she was the victim. You're not a victim, Vanessa, I said, walking closer to her until I was right in her personal space. You're a parasite. I let you feed on me because I was lonely. But I'm not lonely anymore. I'm just angry. I can fix this, she cried, reaching out to grab my hand. I pulled back as if she were radioactive. I'll break up with him. I swear. I'll tell the board it was all his idea. I'll testify against him. Just don't put me in jail, Mayor. Please. Think of all the good times we had. The good times? I laughed. You mean when I did your homework? Or when I paid your rent? Or when you fucked my husband in my house? She flinched. Get out, I said. Meredith. Get out! I screamed. It was the first time I had raised my voice. The sound echoed off the walls, raw and terrifying. Get out of my house. Get out of my company. Get out of my life. If I see you again, I won't call the police. I will destroy you so thoroughly that you won't be able to get a job scrubbing toilets in this city. She scrambled backward, grabbing her bag. She looked at me one last time, eyes wide with terror, and then she ran. I heard the front door slam. I stood there, shaking. My heart was racing. I walked to the door and locked it. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. 1 down. 1 to go. Russell didn't storm in. He didn't have a key anymore. I had changed the electronic locks remotely via the app an hour ago. He knocked. It was a soft, hesitant knock. The knock of a man who knows he is on the wrong side of the door in every sense. It was 11:30 p.m. I opened the door. He looked pathetic. His tuxedo shirt was unbuttoned, his tie was gone, and he smelled of stale scotch and fear. His eyes were red-rimmed. The arrogance from the stage, the shine of the CEO, it was all gone. He looked like a balloon that had lost its air. Meredith, he croaked. Come in, Russell, I said, stepping aside. He walked into the living room and looked around as if he had never seen it before. He looked at the empty spot on the mantel where I had taken down our wedding photo. He looked at the packed boxes near the door, his boxes. You packed my things, he said, his voice trembling. I packed the things you paid for with your own money, I said. It's a very small pile. He slumped onto the sofa. He put his head in his hands and started to cry. It was a loud, wet, ugly sound. I ruined everything, he sobbed. I don't know what happened. It was like a fever dream. Vanessa, she got inside my head, Mayor. She made me feel like I was Superman. She said you didn't appreciate me. She said you were holding me back. I stood by the window, watching him unravel. And you believed her? I asked. I was weak. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. I'm a man, Meredith. I have needs. You were always working. You were always busy with the code. I felt lonely. I was working to pay for the Ferrari you drove to her apartment, I said coldly. I know I messed up. He stood up and tried to walk toward me. I held up a hand, and he stopped. But we can fix this, Rosie. Please. Remember us? Remember the beginning? We were a team. You and me against the world. Rosie. He hadn't called me that in 10 years. It was a cheap shot. There is no us, Russell. There is just the plaintiff and the defendant. His face hardened slightly. The sadness flickered, replaced by a flash of desperation. You can't destroy me, Meredith. The company needs me. I'm the face. The stock will tank if I leave. The investors love me. The investors love the profit, I said. And once I show them the math, that you cost them $3.8 million in theft, they will love seeing you in handcuffs even more. You wouldn't, he whispered. I'm your husband. You ceased being my husband the moment you asked another woman to marry you on a live stream. He paced the room, running his hands through his hair. He was cornered. And a cornered animal bites. Okay, he said, his voice changing. It became lower, meaner. Okay. You want to play hardball? Let's play. I have things on you too, Meredith. Oh, really? Like what? That I work too hard? That I donate to charity? The video, he said. The proposal video. I have the original file. The high-res version. If you fire me, if you ruin me, I'll release the full version. The one where the camera pans to you walking away. You looked pathetic, Meredith. Walking out like a coward. People will laugh at you. You'll be the cuckquean of Silicon Valley. Is that what you want? I stared at him. He was actually trying to blackmail me with the moment of his own infidelity. It was so absurd, so deeply narcissistic, I almost laughed. You think I care about a video? I asked. I know you do, he sneered, regaining some confidence. You hate attention. You hate being looked at. If that video goes viral, really viral, you'll never be able to show your face in public again. I'll spin it. I'll tell everyone we had an open marriage and you got jealous because I chose her over you. I'll ruin your reputation. I pulled out my phone. Is this the video you mean? I asked, opening my gallery. I had downloaded the stream earlier. I pressed play. We watched the tiny figures on the screen. Him kneeling. Me walking away. Yeah, he said. That's the one. Russell, I said, I own the copyright to the live stream. It was filmed by Nexus Equipment at a Nexus event. If you post it, I'll sue you for copyright infringement on top of embezzlement. But I didn't stop there. And just so we are clear on how little leverage you have. I pressed the trash icon. Delete. Then I went to the recently deleted folder. Delete all. I held up the blank phone. I don't need to hide the truth, Russell. The truth is my weapon. You think people will laugh at me? Maybe. For a day. But do you know what they will remember? I took a step closer to him. They will remember that I am the one who fired you. They will remember that I am the one who kept the millions. And they will remember that you are a broke, middle-aged fraud who lost the golden goose because he got greedy. He stared at the phone, then at me. The fight went out of him completely. He collapsed back onto the sofa. Please, he whispered. I have nothing. Vanessa kicked me out. She said I was bad investment. My cards are frozen. I can't even get a hotel room. Don't do this, Rosie. I looked at the man I had loved for 15 years. I looked for a spark of pity in my heart. I searched for it. But all I found was ash. Sign the papers, Russell, I said, pointing to the envelope on the table. Sign them now, and I won't call the police tonight. You can sleep in the guest room, one night only, and leave at dawn. If you don't sign, I call the NYPD and report a $3.8 million theft. He looked at the envelope. He looked at me. With a shaking hand, he reached into his jacket pocket for a pen. He didn't have his expensive Mont Blanc pen anymore. He pulled out a cheap plastic Bic. He signed. I picked up the papers. I checked the signature. It was done. Guest room is down the hall, I said. Don't touch anything. The cameras are watching. I walked to the front door and opened it, just to feel the fresh air. I needed to breathe. I closed it firmly, locking it. I leaned my back against the heavy wood. I could hear him weeping softly in the hallway, but the sound felt distant, like it was coming from another universe. I slid down the door until I was sitting on the floor. I closed my eyes. My body felt heavy, exhausted, but incredibly, wonderfully free. The parasite was gone. The weight was lifted. If you are still listening to this, if you have stuck with me through the betrayal, the heartbreak, and this long, dark night of the soul, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button and comment the number 1 down below. Let me know you are here. Let me know that I'm not crazy for doing this. Your support is the only thing keeping me standing right now. Comment 1 if you're ready to see what happens when the sun comes up and I walk into that boardroom to take back my throne. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed listening to the silence of the apartment, knowing Russell was down the hall in the guest room. It was a strange, liminal space, married but not, together but worlds apart. At 5 a.m., I heard the front door click shut. He was gone. He had taken his 2 boxes and left before sunrise, just as I ordered. I got up and went to the window. I watched a taxi pull away from the curb below. That was it. 15 years of marriage, driving away in a yellow cab. I checked my phone. The internet, however, never sleeps. The story had broken wide open. The video of the proposal had hit Reddit, Twitter, and TikTok. But something unexpected was happening. Russell had threatened that people would laugh at me. And some were. There were nasty comments calling me the clueless wife or making fun of my suit. But the tide was turning. A TikTok from a user named @TechGirl99 had gone viral. She was a former intern at Nexus. In the video, she was practically shouting, "You guys are laughing at her? Do you know who that is? That is Meredith Evans. She wrote the Nexus code. Russell is just a suit. I interned there for a summer. Russell couldn't even open a PDF without help. Meredith fixed a server crash in her pajamas at 3 a.m. She is the genius. He is a clown. #Team Meredith *. The hashtag Team Meredith was trending. I scrolled through the comments. Wait, she owns the company? Boss move walking away. He proposed to the COO on the company dime? That's lawsuit city. Queen behavior. Silence is loud. Then I saw a post from my mother-in-law, Evelyn. Of course. She had posted a long, rambling status on Facebook, *, "My poor son is being victimized by a vindictive woman who controls the purse strings. Meredith has always been jealous of his success. Pray for Russell." But the comments underneath weren't the prayer circle she expected. Evelyn, didn't your son cheat on her publicly? Sit this one down. Jealous of his success? Lady, she bought your house. I felt a lump in my throat. I had spent so many years thinking I was invisible. I thought no one noticed the work I did. I thought I was just part of the furniture. But people had noticed. The interns. The developers. The quiet people in the back of the room. They had seen me. My email inbox was flooded. Not with spam, but with messages from employees. Subject, standing with you. Mrs. Monroe, or Ms. Evans, I just wanted to say that the engineering team is behind you. We know who built this place. Don't let him take it. Dave, Senior Dev. Subject, thank you. You approved my maternity leave when Russell wanted to deny it. I haven't forgotten. We are all waiting for you, Sarah, HR. I started to cry. Not the ugly, desperate tears of last night. These were tears of relief. Tears of validation. I wasn't alone. I had an army. I just hadn't realized it because I was too busy looking at the general who was betraying me. I wiped my eyes. It was 7 a.m. The board meeting was at 9 a.m. I went to my closet. For years, I had dressed to blend in. Beige, navy, gray. Sensible shoes. Don't draw attention, Meredith, Russell would say. You look severe. Today, I didn't want to blend in. I pushed aside the gray suits. I reached into the back of the closet, to a garment bag I had bought on a whim in Paris 5 years ago and never worn. It was a white suit. Sharp, tailored, architectural. It looked like something a villain would wear in a movie, or a hero. Depending on your perspective. I put it on. It fit perfectly. I looked in the mirror. The white fabric made me look radiant, not washed out. I put on a pair of red stilettos, shoes Russell said were too aggressive. I applied red lipstick. I wasn't going to the office to apologize. I wasn't going there to explain. I was going there to conquer. I grabbed my briefcase. Inside were the signed resignation papers, the forensic audit, and the termination notice for Vanessa. I walked out of the penthouse. Patrick the doorman did a double take when he saw me. Mrs. Monroe, wow. You look. Ms. Evans, Patrick, I smiled. From now on, it's Ms. Evans. And thank you. I stepped out onto the street. The air was crisp. The city was awake. I hailed a cab. I didn't take an Uber. I wanted to feel the chaotic energy of the city. Where to, lady? The driver asked. Nexus Tower, I said. And step on it. I have a company to take back. The lobby of Nexus Tower was buzzing. The morning rush was in full swing. Usually, I would scurry through the turnstiles, head down, badge already out, hoping no one would stop me to ask about Russell. Today, I stopped in the center of the atrium. The white suit acted like a beacon. People turned. Conversations stopped. I saw heads leaning together, whispering. I saw phones coming out. I stood tall. I made eye contact. I nodded at the receptionist, who looked like she might faint. Good morning, Kelly, I said clearly. Gee, good morning, Mrs. Ms. Evans, she stammered. I saw Henderson waiting by the elevators. My lawyer. He was wearing a three-piece suit that looked older than the building, and he carried a battered leather briefcase that looked like it held the secrets of the universe. He smiled when he saw me. A shark-like, predatory smile. You look like the angel of death, he said approvingly as I approached. If the angel of death wore Chanel. It's Alexander McQueen, I corrected. Ready, Arthur? I was born ready. I heard Russell is already upstairs. He's trying to rally the board. He brought coffee. Coffee won't fix a $3.8 million hole in the ledger, I said. We stepped into the executive elevator. The doors closed, shutting out the whispers of the lobby. How are you feeling? Arthur asked, watching the numbers climb. Terrified, I admitted. And exhilarated. Good. Use that. Russell is going to try to charm them. He's going to play the victim. He's going to say you're emotional. Don't be emotional. Be Data. I am always Data, Arthur. The elevator chimed at the 40th floor. The executive level. The glass doors slid open. The hallway was quiet, but it was a tense quiet. The administrative assistants were typing furiously, their heads down, but I could feel their eyes on me as we walked past. I walked past Russell's office. The door was open. His nameplate, Russell Monroe, CEO was still on the door. I made a mental note to have maintenance remove it with a screwdriver within the hour. We reached the boardroom. The double doors were closed. I could hear voices inside. Russell's voice. He was talking fast, loud, pitching something. A temporary misunderstanding, marital spat, the vision remained strong. I didn't knock. I placed my hand on the handle. I looked at Arthur. He nodded. I pushed the doors open. The conversation cut off instantly. 12 men and women sat around the massive obsidian table. At the head of the table, where he usually held court, stood Russell. He looked better than last night. He had clearly showered and put on a fresh suit, but his eyes were manic. He froze when he saw me. A sexual partnership, Arthur Henderson interjected from the corner. Which is a violation of the HR Code of Conduct, specifically Article 4 regarding executive relationships and conflicts of interest. Actually, Russell, George said quietly. The incorporation papers show Meredith founded it. You were just the first hire. All in favor? George asked. An engagement ring for your mistress is an investment? Linda asked, her voice like ice. While you are still married to the majority shareholder? And this, I said, pointing the marker at Russell, is the number of lines of code Russell has written. It is the number of strategic product decisions he has made without my approval. It is the number of patents in his name. Arthur, I said. Please distribute the copies. But we are reinstating the overtime pay that was cut last year. And we are increasing the R&D budget by 200%. Get out, I said. Good morning, everyone, I said. My voice was steady, projected from the diaphragm, just like I had practiced in the mirror. I apologize for the interruption. But I believe the personal matter Russell is referring to involves the theft of nearly $4 million of shareholder money. And that makes it very much a boardroom matter. Hi everyone, I said. My voice shook a little, then steadied. I'm Meredith. You know me as the person who fixes the bugs at night. Starting today, I'm the person who signs the checks. There are going to be some changes. No more gold-plated retreat parties. But I am calling for a vote, I said. Motion to accept the immediate resignation of Russell Monroe and the termination of Vanessa Thorne for cause. And a motion to appoint Meredith Evans as interim CEO. I second the motion, Linda said, closing her folder. It wasn't a mistress. Russell pleaded. Vanessa is the COO. We were building a partnership. Meredith, George said. Russell says you froze the accounts out of spite. He says. Meredith, he said, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. I was just telling the board that we need to keep personal matters out of the boardroom. Motion carries, George said. He looked at Russell. Russell, we accept your resignation. Security will escort you out. Mr. Monroe, one said. This way, please. No, Russell, I said. I'm fireproofing it. Now, I said to the board. Let's get back to work. I have a roadmap for the next quarter that doesn't involve street BARTs, but does involve a 20% increase in processing speed. Who wants to hear it? Rosie, don't, he warned, his voice low. You burn me, you burn the company. Russell isn't the engine, I told the board. He's the hood ornament. And hood ornaments are expensive, heavy, and easily replaced. Russell says a lot of things, I interrupted. But numbers don't speak. They just are. She's invisible, he spat. That, I said, locking eyes with Russell, is the receipt. This is the amount Russell and Vanessa have extracted from the company for personal use in the last 5 years. This, I said, turning around, is the total revenue generated by the Nexus algorithm in the last 7 years. The algorithm, I wrote. The patents listed under Meredith Evans. This. George stammered, looking up at Russell. Russell, is this true? Did you spend $45,000 at Tiffany's on the corporate card? Vanessa has already been escorted from the building, I said. Her access was revoked at 8 a.m. She's waiting for you on the curb. I suggest you share a cab. It's cheaper. Vanessa, he said. What about Vanessa? What is this? A board member asked. You can't do this. Russell shouted. George, tell her. I founded this company. You stay out of this, Henderson. Russell snapped. He turned back to the board, desperation in his eyes. Look, okay, maybe I overspent. Maybe I got a little carried away. I'll pay it back. Deduct it from my bonus. But you can't fire me. I am Nexus. I am the face on the magazine covers. If I leave, the stock drops to zero. Meredith can't run this company. She's fragile. She's a back-end coder. She can't talk to the press. She can't lead. You'll fail, he whispered. You're boring, Meredith. No one wants to watch a librarian run a tech company. You'll bore the world to death. You're right, Russell, I said, my back to the room as I wrote. I have been invisible. By choice. The silent genius speaks, the headline read. Asterisk, we announce a restructuring of leadership. Meredith Evans, founder and creator of the Nexus technology, assumes the role of CEO. We thank former management for their service and look forward to a new era of transparency and innovation. Asterisk. Asterisk, Russell signed the repayment agreement. He's liquidating his assets. He's moving back to Ohio to live with his mother. Vanessa has been served with the civil suit. She's looking for a public defender, asterisk. Asterisk statement from Nexus Innovations, asterisk. And if you ever find yourself in a room where people are laughing at you, remember this story. Don't scream. Don't fight. Just wait. Gather your data. Check your contracts. And then, when they least expect it, click the kill switch. Arthur moved around the room, handing out thick packets to each board member. As for Russell? I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he's working at a Best Buy in Ohio, selling computers. He tells customers he used to be a CEO. They nod and smile and ask him where the USB cables are. But before he left, he turned back. But I had found myself. And looking at the balance sheet of my life, that was a massive net profit. Every hand went up. Even the hands of the people Russell had hired. They knew a sinking ship when they saw one, and they weren't going to drown with him. For a second, silence. Gasps around the table. George Abernathy looked from me to Russell, his face pale. George looked at the audit. He looked at the numbers on the whiteboard. He looked at Russell, sweating and manic. Then he looked at me, standing calm and white-suited in the center of the storm. He left. The doors swung shut behind him. He looked at me with pure hatred. He pointed a finger at me. I capped the marker and tossed it onto the table. It clattered loudly. I didn't sit in it. I pushed it aside. I stood at the head of the table. I felt a flare of heat in my chest. But I didn't yell. I walked over to the whiteboard at the front of the room. I felt a warmth spread through my chest that was better than any champagne. I finished my pizza. I walked to the balcony and looked out at the city. I had lost a husband. I had lost a best friend. I had taken back my company. I learned a valuable lesson. Silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes, it's just the sound of someone loading their weapon. I looked at George. I ordered a pizza. I sat on the floor of the living room, eating pepperoni pizza and drinking a glass of cheap red wine. I paused. I picked up a black marker. It squeaked as I uncapped it. I placed my briefcase on the table. I snapped the latches open. The sound was loud in the silence. I pulled out the forensic audit. I slid it down the center of the long table. It spun perfectly, coming to a rest right in front of George. I saw anger on the face of Linda, the representative from our biggest venture capital firm, as she saw the private jet expenses listed as client acquisition. I saw confusion on Russell's face. He hadn't seen this document yet. He knew he had spent money, but I don't think he realized I had tracked every single cent. I saw shock on George's face as he read the section on the satellite office apartment. I smiled. I sold the penthouse. It had too many ghosts. I bought a brownstone in Brooklyn. It has a garden. It has a library. It has a kitchen where I cook for friends, real friends, not parasites. I spent hours with the PR team, drafting a statement. We didn't hide the scandal. We controlled it. I started a scholarship fund for women in STEM. I named it the Evans Grant. Every year, I pay for 10 girls to go to college, so they never have to rely on anyone else for their tuition. I stood on a desk. Yes, in my heels and white suit. I turned back and wrote another number, $3-800-000. I turned on the TV. The news was covering the Nexus shakeup. I walked into the room. The click of my red heels on the floor echoed like gunshots. I didn't look at Russell. I walked straight to the other end of the table, the end opposite him. I walked to the head of the table. To Russell's chair. I was nervous. These were the people who had watched the live stream. They had seen me walk away. I watched their faces. I wrote a number on the board, $847,000,000. I wrote a third number, 0. I'm dating again. His name is Mark. He's an architect. He doesn't care about my money. He likes that I'm smart. On our first date, he asked me to explain quantum computing. We talked for 4 hours. I'm happy. Not the fake, Instagram filter happy I used to portray. Real happy. The kind that comes from knowing you can survive the fire and come out made of steel. My phone buzzed. A text from Arthur. Nexus is thriving. Our stock is up 15%. Turns out, the market likes stability and genius more than it likes flash and drama. Ohio. Evelyn's basement. It was almost too poetic. Russell looked like he wanted to vomit. He took a step toward me. Russell stood there. He looked stripped. The illusion was gone. He wasn't a titan of industry. He was just a man in a suit he couldn't afford anymore. Russell tugged at his collar. George, listen. It's complex. The line between personal brand and corporate brand is blurry. I needed to maintain an image. That ring, it was an investment in the image of success. Russell turned pale. Russell yanked his arm away. He straightened his jacket. He tried to muster one last shred of dignity. He walked to the door. Short. Brutal. Truthful. 6 months later. Smiles broke out around the table. Genuine smiles. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive, but it felt good to finally tell the truth. If you enjoyed this ride, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had to cut a toxic person out of your life? I want to hear your stories. That evening, I went back to the penthouse. It was empty. Russell's boxes were gone. The rest of that day was a blur, but a good blur. The room was silent again. But this time, it wasn't a heavy silence. It was the silence of a vacuum waiting to be filled. The silence in the boardroom was heavy, suffocating. The only sound was the rustling of paper as 12 board members flipped through the forensic audit Arthur had distributed. Then they showed a photo of me. It was a new photo, taken by a photographer outside the building that morning. I looked strong. I looked capable. Then, one person started clapping. It was Dave, the senior dev. Then Sarah from HR. Then the whole room. It wasn't polite applause. It was cheering. They showed a clip of Russell leaving the building, looking disheveled, shielding his face from the paparazzi. They showed Vanessa yelling at a camera, looking deranged. 2 security guards, big men who I had greeted by name in the lobby for years, stepped forward. Until next time, stay smart, stay strong, and keep your receipts. Goodbye. Vanessa pled guilty to tax evasion to avoid a longer sentence. She's doing community service, picking up trash on the highway. I like to think she's finally cleaning up something instead of making a mess. When I walked out onto the trading floor, the open plan office where the developers worked, the room went quiet.